USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This podcast is brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. Well, a team that has kind of found its touch in the last little bit is the University of New Hampshire.
And joining us now on USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of UNH, the New Hampshire Wildcats, that is Mike Souza. And Mike, things are going well in the new year for you. I know that, everybody has different problems right now with COVID and stuff like this, but on the ice, your team is playing well, and that included a sweep last weekend at Boston College.
Yeah, I mean, we've played good hockey as of late, coming out of the break. Starting with the Dartmouth game that we lost. Their goalie played outstanding in that game, and we've been fortunate to have sort of goal scoring by committee. As early in the year, it wasn't necessarily we were playing poorly. We were just having a hard time, putting the puck in the net. And, so that's, made our life a little easier, take some pressure off of everybody. And then we've gotten really good goaltending over that stretch. I go back even before the break, the BU weekend we dumped two, but I thought we played well. So we've played decent hockey for the most part, going back a while, but it's just finding the back of the net has made life a lot easier for us.
Certainly. When you're a coach and you are in that situation where, that if you don't, hold an opponent to 1 or 0 goals, it's probably going to be a loss because you're not scoring much. What do you do? I mean, is there much you can do, or do you just have to be patient and wait for the puck to start bouncing and guys to start finding the net? Because it does seem like it's cyclical. And when mentally as a team, you can get into those ruts where you just start gripping that stick too tight, and it's really hard to put a puck in the net.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a perfect answer other than, we tried to make some adjustments in what we were doing offensively. We sort of in our ozone structure, if you will, but nothing that's like, rocket science, if you will. I mean, making sure we did a better job at having a presence in and around the net, and really trying to create more offense, low as opposed to high. Teams defend so well. You try to build that into practice, really emphasizing, guys bearing down, scoring, trying to put them in, trying to do stuff at practice that, related to, us being harder around the net, and the irony was it wasn't like, we weren't doing that stuff earlier in the year. I guess maybe our staff put more of an emphasis on, hey, maybe getting on guys, if they weren't scoring. But, it's a strange thing. We scored a couple goals the other night that, weren't exactly going to show up on SportsCenter. They were just pucks thrown to the net. But we had a presence in and around the net. One was tipped in, one was kind of a second effort around the net. So, to your earlier part of your question, yeah, absolutely. It puts a ton of pressure on the team and the goaltender when you don't score, right? Like it's, I equate it to a baseball pitcher that, might be throwing strikes and getting outs, but getting no run support. And the strike zone becomes that much smaller, I think, for that pitcher in his own mind. And I think as a goaltender, if you feel like you have to win the game all the time, that's taxing mentally. And I think Ty Conklin has done an unbelievable job with Mike Robinson saying, Michael, you don't need to win us the game. Just give us a chance to win, And I think Michael's done that here for us.
Well, let's start. I'm going to talk about some individual players, and I'll start in goal. You have used a number of different goaltenders this year, but David Fessenden, Mike Robinson have gotten the bulk of the work, and Mike Robinson of late. He's a really experienced kid. We've seen him around this league now for quite some time, a 50-year graduate student here. What have you seen in his game just developing this season in terms of his improvement?
Maturity, I think you just hit the nail on the head. 5th year in the league, there's not a building that he hasn't played in. he's been through different scenarios. He's had some ups and some downs here. The talent has always been there. The best, Mike Robinson, is pretty good. And I feel like he's in a mature place mentally right now, just his behavior at practice. What I mean by that, just, his competitive nature at practice is at a different level than I've seen before from him. I really think Ty Conklin's, has a lot to do with that. And I think he's an older guy that's, we've really just said, hey, Michael, you don't need to win us every single hockey game. So, and I also credit David Fezinen for some of that too. I mean, David's pushed Mike this year. David's played well when called on. Certainly. He had a nice stretch there, a big win over Providence earlier in the year. So I think having another guy behind Michael has forced his game to rise, the level of his game to rise. And so that was our intention all along in bringing David in here. And he's certainly done that for us. And we know that he's more than capable of going in any night and winning us a hockey game. And that's we're talking about goaltending a lot less around here, Jim. And that's a good thing for us.
Up front, you have a very experienced core of forwards, and that's led by Jackson Pearson, a 10-goal scorer already this season. What does he give you each night? Yeah, I think, you've heard me say this before. I think he's one of the top players, and certainly in our conference. Jackson is, second-team All-League guy last year. The one thing I will say about Jackson this year is his play without the puck. Not that it ever wasn't good. It's even better. I mean, he's, I think he's one of the best defensive forwards in the league. If you look at his face-off percentage, he's our best penalty killer. He's not only our best, offensive power play guy. He's our best penalty killer. He's a guy that I think other coaches in the league respect. And I think that he sort of drives our offense. He's just a cerebral player. Sees the ice well, makes the guys around him better. And, that's why I think, he's recognized by the coaches in the league last year. And I'm sure this year as well. If he continues the streak he's been on, he will be again. So, certainly lucky to have him.
Mike, last year was a real scramble every week for rescheduling. It would be into the week before you knew for sure who you were playing. COVID is still making an impact, but not quite like last year. You did have one game canceled against St. Lawrence, but how have you been coping with that, and how's the COVID situation been for UNH?
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like it's the elephant in the room. Every day, you don't know necessarily. I shouldn't say every day, but there's stretches of time where you're like, okay, well, we got to wait till we get our tests back. Because we're still testing here at UNH. It's affected us. It affected us up at Dartmouth. It affected us, obviously, the weekend you mentioned against St. Lawrence and Clarkson, where we had the Clarkson weekend. That was a proud moment for me as a coach, because we had some guys really step up for us that maybe don't play quite often or don't play or haven't played it. One guy hadn't played at all. So, and you step up and you win that game. We had one varsity goalie dressed that night. So we're still dealing with some of the madness associated with it. Nothing compares to last year. I mean, last year for me was, not a lot of fun. I mean, it was, the thing with last year was you never knew if you were going to get to the next day. So you felt like you owed it to the kids to play or to practice, when you may have not always been acting with, with the greatest of sense in terms of, competing. But, guys had, been out for X amount of days and then, 2 practices, and then they were playing games. It really wasn't fair to those young men. So most of that, the hard part of it's beyond us, but the uncertainty of it still is there. I just know that we've done a fairly good job at navigating it here. And I foresee us not having any interruptions moving forward.
More with Mike Souza in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. Visit dcu.org.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Know how people say life happens? Well, for me, life was happening, and I needed a new truck. I didn't have time to shop around for a good loan, so I got one from the dealer, higher interest and all. Month after month, those payments were squeezing me. So I went to DCU. They refinanced my loan and helped lower my rate, which lowered my payments. These days, I have more money in my pocket for whatever life throws at me. What will DCU mean to you? Insured by NCUA. Membership required. Visit dcu.org.
We're back now on USCHO Spotlight with UNH head coach Mike Souza. You're about midway through the Hockey East season, a little bit down in the standings, but one thing that jumps out at me with any of the leagues in college hockey this year is how 1 or 2 weekends can totally turn that around. And so just kind of in general, what the Hockey East landscape looks like this year and just trying to battle through towards the end of the season weekend by weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I just, the word everyone always uses is parity. This parity throughout college hockey. I mean, you can lose on any given night to, any team in college hockey, and on any given night you can beat that. You can beat another team. So for me, it's all about what you do in the second half, and your team playing well in the second half. I like that, as Jim said. I like the fact that we've got some players that have been around our league. We had a really good weekend for us last weekend against Boston College. I mean, I know we're sitting in ninth, but we're only a few points out of fourth. I read, yesterday. I just try to stay focused on making sure that we're prepared today to go. And we have a huge opportunity in weekend against Connecticut this weekend, who's obviously ahead of us. Really good team, talented team. So, I mean, it's just about trying to play, keep getting better. I guess it's I guess Belichick-esque going up in New England and living around here. It's not exciting. It's not exciting, but it's the truth. And that's what we talk about all the time. Our goal is to be better this week than we were last week, and hopefully continue to win some games.
Can you point to some things that are leading to parity around college hockey? Is it player skill? Is it preparation? What kind of things are making it harder to separate from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. That's an interesting question. That's like a roundtable debate, I think, with some coaches, because you can point to a lot of things, and just in technology, maybe recruiting's become easier in a way. It's harder to be Brian McCloskey or Grant Stanbrook. Going up and finding a kid that nobody knows about, right? So there's accessibility to every player in the world through means of technology, which, and I think there's been, an increase in scholarships at more programs, which obviously has led to that. There's the transfer portal. There's a myriad of factors that have gone into it. And I think there's really quality coaching, throughout college hockey, I think, which, it helps to drive the parity, in college hockey today. And it's just, I don't know if there's a perfect answer to that, but I think those are some of the reasons maybe as to why.
You mentioned the transfer portal. That certainly adds a new layer of things to recruiting and planning for the season. How are you and your staff approaching transfers for this coming year?
We haven't given it much thought right now, to be honest with you. I mean, last year we ended up with two guys, and David Fezenden from Huntsville, and then Harrison Blaisdell joined us from North Dakota. The year before, Tyler Ward joined us from Denver. We feel that right now our roster's shaping up nicely for next year with our incoming freshman class, our returning players, and so we'll take it as it comes. You can't worry about transfers you don't know about, and so we certainly don't know necessarily who's going to transfer. You get the grad transfer thing, which is interesting too. So it's just making sure you keep your ear to the ground and the landscape and try to be ready if there's a kid that ends up in the portal. But for right now, our focus is on making sure that we're doing a really good job in recruiting and developing our current players.
Mike, you mentioned it. You're going to play a 2-game series down at Connecticut this weekend, and when I look at UNH and Connecticut, maybe the approach of the game isn't the same, but I look at two programs that probably feel like they're in the same position, have been toward that lower half of the league, but have a lot of talent and want to move up and probably see that opportunity. How similar do you feel like your situation is to what Mike Kavanaugh's down at UConn?
Well, I look, first and foremost, I look at his team, and I see a very talented team, with some depth. Their forward group is really strong. I think, you've got, scoring champion Johnny Evans, and then you take, I think, first off is maybe the most skilled, talented forward in the league. And then, Ryan Teverberg's down there, and he was vying to make Canada's World Junior team. So they've got a very talented group. They're, my relationship with Michael and the staff down there, and I have the most respect for them and the job they do. And I know it's exciting that they're building a new rink down there. And so, but yeah, I mean, it gets back to the whole thing about it being just the parity, the grind, and it's just, they've had our number, the last couple of years, but it's, yeah, I mean, everyone's chasing to be in that top four, right, Jim? I mean, it seems like if you're a top four team in our league, you end up in the NCAA tournament, right? So that's certainly a goal of ours. I know it's a goal of Mike's, and it's sure we don't want to be at the bottom of the conference, that's for sure. And so, but it's about coaching, and it's about making sure that you go out and perform when it's Friday and Saturday night. Win games. So.
Well, it's been 7 wins in your last 10 games. Things certainly looking up for UNH. Mike Souza, we always appreciate your time. It was great to have you join us today, and good luck the rest of the way.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me on.
That's UNH's Mike Souza. Jim, New Hampshire's found the back of the net as of late, and when you start playing better, and you're in a situation where 1 or 2 weekends can vault you from near the bottom of the league to the top, New Hampshire's in a pretty good position right now as they go forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was lean early in the season. They swept Union to start the season and scored some goals in those games. But then after that, this is in line: 1 goal, 1 goal, 0 goals, 1 goal, 2 goals, 1 goal, 1 goal, 2 goals. You're just not going to win games with those types of numbers. And, they even found a way to pull a couple of wins out of those. But now that they've put goals in the net, the puck going in, 7 against Mercyhurst, 5 against Clarkson, 8 in 2 games last weekend against Boston College. I mean, when you get that confidence, it just changes things, because they've had solid defense and they've had good goaltending all season. It's just been finding ways to score. And now that the puck's going in, you're seeing the results.
What a change it's been in Hockey East in the past few seasons. I think back a few years ago, it seemed like it was always BC, BU, New Hampshire when it was having some success at times. But now anybody can be in the mix, and new powers have emerged in the league. It's very interesting to watch that.
Yeah, I feel like, too, Ed, that the top of the league hasn't moved too much in terms of the ceiling, but the bottom of the league has started to rise toward the top. You don't have any team that is an easy walkover. At times their Maine has started to really struggle. UNH, Vermont, all 3 of those teams, Merrimack, you throw them in. All of those teams, you could probably count on, as long as you played decent hockey, you were going to take probably a win and a tie or 2 wins out of every season if you were one of the top 4 teams. Now, that is not the case. We saw it last weekend, Boston College getting swept by New Hampshire. We saw Providence getting swept by Merrimack. So these teams down the bottom have certainly started to creep up. And when you look at the standings, that's more evident. You just heard Mike Souza say that, they really are. And I think, they're a 6-point weekend possibly away from being in 5th place. So if they were to get, 2 wins down at UConn this weekend, they could move from 9th place all the way to 5th. So that's how tight this league has become. It is the bottom moving up, though. I think that is one of the best things you can see in a league, that, yes, maybe this is not, the Big Ten where you have, Michigan and Minnesota, and that they're 2 of the best teams in the country, or the NCHC where you have 2 or 3 of the best teams, but you might have some bottom feeders. There is no bottom feeder anymore in Hockey East.
It's also really interesting to hear Mike talk about COVID. It's not, as you used the word a week or 2 ago, a panic, a scramble like it was before, but it has impacted teams and has caused some rosters to be a little light at times as players go through the protocol.
Yeah, you don't hear the term e-bug in college hockey, which is an NHL or a pro hockey term, emergency backup goalie. But Mike Souza was telling us off the air before, he kind of had 2 e-bug situations this year where he had to find kids that had eligibility, qualify them through the NCAA clearinghouse at the last minute just so that they could sit on the bench. He actually said he put one of the goalies in for 35 or 36 seconds so that they got their name in the score sheet. But, that is kind of the most extreme situations. We have seen some teams go out and play with only 15 players at this point, and that's kind of the minimum that most leagues are requiring, 15 skaters. And as somebody told me at the league level, we're saying 15 skaters. If you have 14 forwards and 1 defenseman, you're still playing. So you're going to have to convert some players to D-men. That's a totally different scenario. But I do feel like, I think you and I and Derek Schooley talked about it before Christmas, that we were in a really bad place. We're getting into a better place. A lot of these teams have had COVID run through their squad. So hopefully as we get down toward the postseason, it won't be looming over the NCAA tournament and postseason tournaments like it was a season ago.
One thing that may end up looming is teams having missed some games that could impact them for the postseason. I'm not saying necessarily in the case of New Hampshire, but they lost a non-conference game versus St. Lawrence. Those are definitely going to impact the pairwise going along, those missed non-conference games here and there.
And they will. And I think teams are doing their best to try to make up the games. You're not going to see that game against St. Lawrence, an 8.5-hour bus ride from New Hampshire. You're not going to see that game made up. But if you can make up games, teams are trying to do that. Teams are also trying to find other games to maybe just play. Maybe you're playing a league opponent on a Tuesday night and you call it a non-conference game, just so that, teams can get closer to that 34 games at the end of the season. That, I think, is the goal of every coach.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of USCHO Spotlight. This has been brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.